exposed. My sister's shocking betrayal invited me to watch her wedding. My incredible response. As the invitation landed on my kitchen counter, shimmering white and embossed with gold lettering, it felt like a lightning bolt striking straight through my heart. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Jessica and Blake. Just like that, my younger sister was inviting me to witness the culmination of everything I had once dreamed of, a wedding with the man I had loved fiercely before she swooped in, breaking us apart and leaving nothing but cold resentment in its wake. My hands trembled as I clutched the invitation, breath hitching in my throat. After all these years of feeling overshadowed and dismissed, trusting my sister felt undeniably precarious. In the quaint Midwestern town that had become my classroom and refuge, I had devoted my life to teaching science, struggling to find my identity in a world that seemed to elevate Jessica's every move. The accolades she racked up: a glamorous job, new boyfriend after new boyfriend, headlines splashed across social media were like daggers, each one piercing deeper into me. No one seemed to see my diligence and perseverance behind the scenes, my sacrifices to teach young minds in a world that often seemed devoid of wonder. With my students' excitement ringing in my ears, I swirled between inspiration and apathy, caught in the suffocating web of familial loyalty and burgeoning resentment. The wedding was to take place at the town's charming chapel, where I would see the glories of my sister's vision come to life. Anticipation churned in my stomach like a storm, my breath becoming increasingly irregular as memories swept me back to that moment of betrayal, when Jessica had chosen Blake over our bond. Torn and gasping, my heart ached with anger. Could we ever dredge up the sisterly affection we once shared? Would I, on that fateful day, have the strength to address the crevices of our broken relationship? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the rehearsal approached, unease gnawed at my insides. The picturesque flowers and twinkling lights did nothing to quell the mounting tension. Observing Blake's charming smile felt like looking at a mask manipulative and curated. His charm seeped into the room, raising so many red flags that I felt compelled to uncover his intentions. Every quirk, every laugh, every glance felt loaded with a hidden agenda. I clenched my jaw, wrestling with the impulse to confront him, to lay bare the doubts swirling through my heart. But all eyes were on Jessica, the bride painted in perfection, a facade begging to be questioned. Yet I hesitated. It was in that moment before the ceremony, with Jessica poised to walk down the aisle, that my resolve crystallized into a fierce determination. Instead of pouring forth the standard above and beyond speech, I felt an urge to unveil the emotional truths hiding beneath the surface of this celebration. The weight of a lifetime of betrayal pressed down sharply. As I prepared to stand, the crowd fell silent, breaths caught in anticipation of what would spill forth from my shaking lips. Would this be a reckoning or another lonely fracture in our fragile bond? The stakes felt higher than just a wedding. We were navigating the delicate territory of hurt and hearts, truth and loyalty. As I looked at Jessica, her mask slipped just slightly, anger flaring in her eyes that mirrored my own discontent. The unaddressed grievances between us loomed larger than life, and as I opened my mouth, ready to confront not just her choices but the very foundation of our family legacy, I hesitated. Would love and honesty triumph? The silence enveloped the chapel like a heavy shroud, my heart pounding as uncertainty pooled in my chest. The dichotomy of my sister's poised youth and my festering discontent twisted within me. I had rehearsed my words in the mirror countless times, each iteration more fiery, more revealing than the last. Yet this pulsing moment felt starkly different. The ramifications of my impending words abrupt and unpredictable. As Jessica caught my gaze, a flicker of doubt crossed her face. It was bizarre, seeing the cracks in her carefully constructed facade, the bride already burdened with the weight of her choices. The moment was ripe for honesty, yet anxiety coiled around my gut like barbed wire. What if confronting her only deepened the chasm we had fought so fiercely to ignore? Would I unleash a torrent of hurt that would drown us both? I fought against resignation, aware that the absence of confrontation often births bitterness. The collective sigh of the crowd seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, prompting me to summon the courage that had so eluded me over the years. My role as a sister had always been defined by patience and harmony, but now I had the chance to reclaim my voice. Blake stood confidently beside her, oblivious to the gravity of the tension swirling between us. Though he wore the cloak of charm, I saw through the guise. It felt like a masquerade. His reassuring smile was a mirror, reflecting every fear I had ever harbored. This was not merely about Jessica's choices. It was about the layers of my own existence that had been suffocated in her shadow. I felt the ground shifting beneath me, a subtle awakening alongside my resentment. Who was I to drown in jealousy when I could rip the veil off this charade? My life had unfolded in the sanctuary of the classroom, filled with exploration and discovery, yet here I was paralyzed by a specter from the past. It was time to leverage my experience, to breathe life into my long-buried aspirations. My heart raced. The words that came next would redefine me. I could not only challenge them but use the moment for my own growth. I had to unearth the depth of my conviction. Did I want reconciliation? Or was I ready to assert myself beyond familial ties? A wild mix of determination surged as the moment stretched. Was I prepared to risk it all? I have something to say. My voice, though trembling, rang clear in the hushed room, cutting through the fabric of expectation. Jessica's eyes widened, a flash of panic evident. I could sense the impending storm in the air. It was my reckoning. The focus shifted, broadening the horizon of possibilities that lay before me. It wasn't just about my sister's impending vows. It was about laying claim to my narrative, about stepping into the space I had long neglected. Each word carefully entwined in my mind became my armor, a shield against insecurities that had haunted me for too long. As I began to articulate my thoughts, I realized this was not merely about scandal but a personal enlightenment, a declaration of my own strength. It was a defining moment of self-actualization wrapped in familial conflict. But as the room turned to face me, an unexpected revelation dawned. Something deeper lurked beneath this confrontation. Was I truly prepared to uncover the truths hidden away in the shadows of our past, knowing it could unravel everything? My pulse quickened, teetering on the brink of honesty. But would it cost me my sister forever? Every eye in the room locked onto me, a sea of silent expectation swirling like a tempest. The tension felt palpable, as though each moment held the potential to either unite or destroy. I steadied my breathing, channeling every ounce of my turbulent emotions into that singular moment. This was not a time for silence. It was a time to unearth the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I know about the conversation you had with Mom, I said, my voice clearer now. The one where you confessed your fears about marrying Blake. Each word grew bolder, my conviction cementing itself through sheer urgency. I've watched you stand there with that smile, but it feels like it's become a mask. Jessica's composure faltered, rippling through her facade and unraveling that exposed just enough. Her hands tightened around her bouquet as if it were a lifeline. The crowd held its collective breath, the only sound echoing my heartbeat punctuating the air. I had crossed a threshold, stepping into a role I had long denied myself. Do you really think he's the right choice? I pressed, the question hanging awkwardly between us. It embodied the culmination of years of observation, of feeling overshadowed and neglected, while she basked in the glow of societal accolades. A picture of perfection. You need to be sure. This isn't just about the wedding day. This is about your life. A flicker of irritation flashed in her eyes, but it was quickly shrouded by fear. I could sense the fault lines forming, the depths of her inner turmoil peeking through the cracks. The realization was monumental. I had the power to challenge her, to show her that her surface-level confidence couldn't mask her underlying insecurities. In a stroke of inspiration I continued, I don't want you to regret anything because you felt you had to wear that perfect smile for the world. I could feel the heat radiate from my chest, a mixture of fear and euphoric liberation pulsing through me. With each word, my self-doubt evaporated. I was no longer the sister silently playing the supportive role. I had inserted myself into this crucial chapter of her life, taking ownership of my narrative. Jessica's face hardened, and I anticipated the rebuttal, the rush of indignation against my piercing inquiry. But beneath her stiff exterior, I sensed a battle, a clash of her own emotions, unacknowledged amidst the chaos of wedding preparations. The weight of unspoken history loomed behind us, reminders of sibling rivalry, comparison, and inadequacies. But it was also a moment of clarity, as the past intertwined with present vulnerability, revealing glimpses of our shared humanity. I had kept my own aspirations dormant for too long, but now they emerged from the shadows. I took a step closer, my gaze unwavering. You need to live for yourself, not for anyone else, least of all Blake or Mom. This isn't just about who you want to marry. It's about who you want to be. A flicker of realization played across Jessica's features, as if she were suddenly weighing the enormity of her choices juxtaposed against a backdrop of familial expectations. My heart raced. Had I planted a seed of doubt? Was this confrontation forging a new bond or deepening the rift? But just as I dared to hope for clarity between us, I glimpsed the corners of Jessica's mouth twitch downward, a crack in her carefully crafted portrait. It felt explosive, a moment suspended in time, brimming with dormant revelations. Yet, in that volatile silence, my own turmoil surfaced. Had I awakened her to her buried aspirations, or had I merely opened a wound too vast to heal? The tension seemed to thicken, an indecisive pause poised to plunge us both into chaos. Would I be able to guide her through this momentary turbulence, or was I simply stirring the storm, risking everything for a chance of meaningful connection? I held my breath, ready for her response, aware that this moment could change not just her life, but my own forever. She opened her mouth, hesitating just long enough for the air to grow thick with tension. Again my heart plummeted. But then I caught a flicker of something deep within her eyes, an echo of my own struggle. That moment pushed me into an unforeseen territory of clarity. I wasn't just challenging her. I was challenging parts of myself I'd long buried beneath layers of obligation and fear. Do you want to know what I really think? Jessica finally said, her voice trembling slightly. I think you've always been jealous of me. Her words struck like a slap, unexpected and stinging. Each syllable rang with an accusation that few siblings ever dared to air aloud. The audience tensed, sensing the shift toward confrontation. I hadn't anticipated this, her defense mechanism rising up, turning the spotlight back onto me. I opened my mouth to respond, to defend myself against her claim, but the truth tangled in my chest like a fraying rope. She wasn't wrong in her perception. Jealousy had colored too many moments in our lives, clouding my own ambitions and desires. The realization coursed through my veins, igniting an urgency to harness this confrontation rather than flee from it. Maybe you're right, I admitted, my voice steadier than before. But what does that jealousy stem from? It comes from years of feeling inadequate while you effortlessly wore the crown of achievement. I've watched you, Jessica, not just as a sister, but as someone trying to find a way to carve out a space for my own dreams. There was a collective gasp from the crowd, absorbed in a moment we had never openly acknowledged. It was a painful truth, raw and illuminating. Seeing the stark reality of our childhood dynamic resonated within me, fueling my desire for change not just for myself but for our relationship. Jessica's brows knitted together, and I saw her grappling with the truth of my words. I could almost trace her internal struggle, the competing narratives of fear and validation. A nagging doubt flickered in my mind, had I gone too far? But this was the moment perhaps that needed to happen. This confrontation was not just about her impending marriage. It was about lifting the weight of our shared history, the expectations that had suffocated us both. If I couldn't voice my truth here, in this precarious state, when could I? Jessica, I said, leaning in closer. Let us redirect this. Sure, I've dealt with jealousy, but I also want you to understand that I care about your happiness. Behind all those feelings is a fierce desire for us to both win in our lives, to be truly ourselves. You're standing at a fork in the road. Don't let outside pressure lead you down a path you'll later regret. Her expression softened, and I saw her begin to reel in the armor she had built around herself. In that moment of vulnerability, I sensed an opening, a shift toward authenticity. Maybe I wasn't merely risking our relationship. I was cultivating the soil for something more real than what had previously existed. We can't keep sedating ourselves with perfection, I continued, my heart pounding with the thrill of authenticity. The world demands more from us than that. A realization washed over me. I wasn't just advocating for her. I was challenging myself to pursue my own authenticity in the process. Jessica's lips quivered, her defenses wavering under our shared confrontation. You really think I need to stand up for myself? She questioned, a hint of fear still lingering. Yes, I urged, undaunted. If you're ready to marry Blake, make sure it's because it's what you truly want, none of this surface-level family ideal. Be bold enough to imagine a life that aligns with your heart. The room felt charged with the weight of my words and the mutual reckoning of our shared experiences. Then, just as I thought we were beginning to connect, I noticed Blake's stiff figure hovering at the threshold, casting a long shadow. He had heard everything. A rush of uncertainty engulfed me. Would he support her burgeoning independence or further entrench her in the very traditions I urged her to break? As Blake's glare penetrated my resolve, the undercurrents of conflict tightened around us, and I sensed a dangerous pivot. I could have retreated, but this was no longer just about Jessica. It was about my own awakening personal liberation hinged upon authenticity. Was I prepared to confront not only my sister's choices but also the ramifications of this unexpected battle with Blake? With the weight of unresolved family history and identity swirling, I prepared myself for the inevitable fallout. The tension in the room was palpable. Blake's angry stare bore into me, demanding a reaction, while Jessica's timid uncertainty filled the silent void between us. I felt the weight of unresolved choices pressing against my chest. This was no longer just a family gathering. It was a crucible for my personal evolution, testing every ounce of courage I could muster. Is this what you really want? Blake's voice cut through the silence, firm and unyielding, as he stepped further into the light, asserting his presence. A sister that pits herself against family values for the sake of her own insecurities? His words struck me like a physical blow, reverberating through the silence. My heart raced as I forced myself to breathe, my initial shock morphing into a blur of clarity and resolve. Would I allow his attack to distract from the essence of our earlier conversation? Blake, this isn't about you or your ideals, I countered, my voice steadier now, filled with a newfound articulation. This is about Jessica finding her own voice. You can't overshadow her decision with a facade of tradition. As this confrontation unfolded, my mind drifted back to the expectations that had shadowed both Jessica and myself for years. It was a labyrinth we had grappled with as children, and now it lay open for scrutiny. I held on to the hope that if I stood my ground, perhaps she would find the courage to do the same. Jessica's eyes darted between Blake and me as if searching for an anchor amidst the tempest. She was at a critical junction of self-discovery. My heart ached for her, knowing the fear of stepping into the unknown. Blake, she whispered, her voice fragile yet audible. I want to know my own heart. I can't embrace our future if it means burying my true self. For an instant the tension broke. I saw a flicker of empowerment light up within her. It was as if she had taken the first step toward independence, and I was both terrified and exhilarated by the shift. See, this is your decision, Jess, I urged, my voice rising slightly with enthusiasm. Don't let anyone sway you from what you really want. You owe it to yourself to reclaim your narrative. Blake shifted uneasily, caught off guard by Jessica's tentative declaration. The reevaluation of the situation felt tangible. It was no longer just about her wedding. It was now about finding clarity amid chaos, defining our desires outside the walls of familial servitude. Suddenly, the room felt less like an arena of conflict and more like a platform for growth. It became evident that while Blake's ideals were entrenched in tradition, they were starkly at odds with what Jessica needed to explore. A glimmer of understanding flickered between the three of us, illuminating the possible paths our futures could take, the paths of authenticity and acceptance. But before I could savor my small victory, Blake's face darkened, frustration spilling over. You're going to regret this, Jess. You'll realize that family matters more than following your whims. The words hung in the air, heavy and threatening. I could see Jessica's mind racing, her internal turmoil on full display. Yet this was just one more obstacle to navigate on her road to empowerment. Regret is part of any journey, I replied, my determination solidifying. You can't let fear dictate your choices anymore. As Blake continued to seethe, Jessica took a calculated breath. I watched her grapple with the implications. This was a tipping point. She could either retreat into the comfort of familiar expectations or forge a path toward self-acceptance and independence. Then the unthinkable happened. Jessica turned toward Blake, her voice steady and strong. No more hiding behind what's expected. My life is mine to live. I want to marry because I choose to, not because I'm afraid of disappointing anyone. The room fell deathly silent as the weight of her words settled over us. In that moment, she stood as the embodiment of reclaimed power, a realization that resonated deeply within me, illuminating the next steps in my journey. Blake recoiled, caught in the grip of unyielding realities. This confrontation was not just a clash of ideals. It was now a benchmark for self-discovery, and forging a strong foundation away from inherited burdens. How would Blake react to this newfound strength in Jessica? Would he try to diminish her victory, or would he finally understand the importance of her independence? As my sister held her ground, I felt the tide of change washing over us. This was only the beginning of our battle for authenticity, and I was left questioning how far we would have to go to reclaim who we truly were. Would the next confrontation involve our histories redefined, shattering brittle legacies, or would it open the door to unimagined connections? Blake's silence filled the room, a stark contrast to the declarations that had just echoed in the air. I could see his mind racing, calculating responses, seeking to regain control over the narrative that had slipped from his grasp. My stomach knotted tightly as I sensed his impending counterattack. "Do you really think this is about you being happy?" he finally said, his voice dripping with skepticism. "You're choosing momentary satisfaction over stability, and for what? To please some idea of yourself that doesn't even exist?" His skepticism was like a weight pressing down on Jessica, and I watched her confidence quiver for a moment. I felt my heart race again, not just for her but for my own budding resolve. This wasn't merely a chance for Jessica. It was an opportunity for me to further disentangle myself from the familial expectations that had so long tethered my own growth. "Being happy is more than a moment, Blake," I interjected quickly, unwilling to let him suffocate this moment of clarity. "It's about being authentic and being true to herself, not fitting into a mold that never suited her. Don't you see? All you're doing is fostering insecurity by enforcing a warped sense of loyalty." The room felt charged with energy, and suddenly the walls felt as if they were closing in again. It was exhilarating and terrifying at once. I was stepping into a role I had long dismissed, a protector against familial tyranny. As Jessica absorbed my words, her face shifted from uncertainty to determination. I could see her standing taller, her posture reflecting an inner strength. Perhaps she realized, just as I had, there was no single definition for family. Perhaps love entailed respecting choices, however unconventional. "Blake," she said slowly, her voice steadier, embodying a clarity I hoped to mirror. "My understanding of family includes supporting each other as dreams, not extinguishing them. You've always pushed for conformity, but at what cost?" I felt my own heartbeat synchronized with her words. The very act of standing alongside Jessica felt revolutionary. It was a powerful reminder of why I had embarked on my own journey of self-acceptance, and it brought a renewed sense of purpose within me. Watching Blake visibly squirm in this newfound tension was oddly liberating, yet also unnerving. Perhaps this confrontation would catalyze not just change for Jessica but across the family. He clenched his jaw, searching for the right words, as if trying to piece together a response that could reclaim his authority. "You might think you have the strength to make this choice, but I know better. When life becomes complex, when responsibilities pile up, you'll see the error of your reckless independence." His words were more than a mere insult. They were laced with a vulnerability that hinted at his own insecurities. Was he truly scared of losing his grip on the family unit? Or was he projecting his fears of inadequacy on Jessica? "Complexity is part of growth, Blake," I stated carefully. "The very act of making choices is what leads to clarity and understanding. Integrity comes from facing complexities head-on." In our family dynamic, it was clear we had entered a territory fraught with danger and uncertainty. I could hardly contain the conflicting emotions swirling within me, fear of the unknown, mixed with exhilaration from standing up against a dominant ideology. Jessica's next words hung in the air like a fragile promise waiting to be fulfilled. "I need to pursue the life I choose, with or without your blessing." In response, Blake's frustration morphed into something darker. I could sense the imminent clash, his desire for dominance fueling his actions, his entire being bracing for impact. As he opened his mouth to respond, every part of me held my breath. The future of our relationship, not just with Blake but within our family, hung in the balance. Were we on the brink of salvaging our identities, Or would this confrontation dismantle what remained of our familial bonds? I stepped closer to Jessica, silently urging her to embrace the vulnerability in her strength. And as we faced Blake together, I realized this journey was only beginning. The battle for authenticity loomed large, promising deeper revelations and challenges that lay ahead. What other hidden truths awaited us in the labyrinth of our family narrative? And how would we navigate the storm brewing from this encounter? The air thickened with palpable tension as Blake's frustration tinged with anger hung over us. I had never seen him so unhinged. He was normally the rock, the unyielding force in our family. Yet here he was, caught off guard, grappling with a crumbling facade. In that moment, I felt a peculiar sense of empowerment emerging from the depths of my own insecurities, a realization that perhaps I was more than just the shadow cast by my family's expectations. What do you mean by that? Blake barked, an indignant edge creeping into his voice. I could see the storm brewing behind his stunning blue eyes, a tempest of fear and rage struggling against the notion that his little sister might break free from the mold he'd meticulously crafted around her. Blake, Jessica replied, her voice unyieldingly calm. This isn't just about you or your idea of family. This is about me realizing my potential and choosing happiness for myself. You might think stability is the key, but sometimes true stability comes from embracing our uncertainties. I marveled at her newfound conviction. She had transformed before my eyes into a fierce advocate for her own destiny. In the echo of her words, I could hear my own hesitations surfacing. Was I still bound by the deadly weight of obligation that Blake wielded like a sword? Blake shifted his focus from Jessica to me, his gaze piercing with accusation. And you? Are you now an authority on happiness too? Look at yourself. How many risks have you taken lately? You're just as groped by indecisiveness as she is. His words dripped with condescension, but I found myself at a crossroads, an unexpected springboard toward growth. I had always allowed myself to be viewed as less than capable, the natural peacemaker who dissipated animosity rather than confronting it. For the first time, I felt anger rise within me, not for Blake but for the limitations I'd imposed upon myself. Every choice I've made has been a step toward understanding who I really am, I countered, feeling the fire of conviction stoking my voice. Your opinion doesn't define my self-worth, nor does it diminish the power that comes with choice. It's time I stopped tiptoeing around your judgments. The audacity of my own words surprised me, as if I detrained in a way to fight back against the weight of conformity. In that moment the roles seemed to shift. Where I had previously succumbed to uncertainty, now I stood boldly, both as an individual willing to confront the oppressive lineage, and as a brother bearing witness to Jessica's emergence. Exactly, Jessica echoed, her confidence bolstering. Blake, you call my dreams reckless, but who are you to define what stability looks like for me? I want to create my own paths. There was a defiant pride in her eyes, and I knew that we had both reached a turning point, a distinct slicing of the ties that sought to bind us. Blake's face darkened, emotions bubbling dangerously beneath the surface. It was a moment where empathy battled head-on with an undeniable sense of survival. You're both going to regret this, he hissed. But there was a chilling quiver in his voice, one that betrayed an unexpected fear. Regret what? Pursuing our happiness? I responded ruthlessly. It's time we shatter your ideal and challenge the false security you've crafted. Suddenly, the weight of our family identity hung in the air, a fraying thread threatening to give way at any moment. Would this confrontation lead to liberation, or would it irrevocably fracture the unyielding structure Blake had governed? Uncertainty both terrified and exhilarated me. The defining moment teetered on a precipice, a trembling balance between the nostalgic comfort of our past and an exhilarating future cradled in authenticity. We had lit a fuse that would unravel complexities we had long buried. As I stole a glance at Jessica, a fragile smile played on her lips, and I recognized in her eyes my own longing for independence. This was our birthright, an awakening of sorts. We were piecing together our identities with a boldness that could no longer be suppressed. But just as the momentous shift permeated the air, Blake took a step back, his demeanor hardening. Your choices could lead you down a path you won't return from, he warned, a haunting finality crashing against the walls we had built together, and my heart raced. What he didn't know was that maybe, just maybe, our journey into the unknown would yield something greater than we had ever imagined, an unforeseen freedom that, in defiance of familial constraints, would challenge even the most calculative of minds. And as I braced myself for the storm that was bound to follow, I couldn't shake the question. Were we prepared for the consequences of our own liberation? The aftermath of our standoff lingered in the air like heavy fog, enveloping the moments that followed. I could feel the tension twisting around my insides, creating knots of uncertainty. Blake had always demanded unwavering loyalty from us, and as I watched him spiral in frustration, I found myself grappling with a vital question. Was it time to redefine loyalty? As the initial shock subsided in the wake of our confrontation, I felt a surge of clarity. Our family's expectations had long acted as my prison, shaping decisions and trapping my ambitions under compromise. It was no longer just about proving a point to Blake. This was a quest for autonomy, a desire to reclaim my narrative from the confines he presented. Jessica's resolve stayed with me like a guiding light. Her determination inspired me to confront my own fears. The idea of pursuing what I wanted, no matter how irrational or undesirable, it seemed to Blake, filled me with a mix of dread and exhilaration. Maybe I needed to challenge myself beyond the anxiety that wrapped around confrontation. Unable to sit idle, I sought the sanctuary of my workspace, a modest study cluttered with sketches and half-finished projects. This room felt like a canvas for my repressed ideas, a sanctuary where ambition met creativity. As I sat at my desk, the need to transform ideas into action washed over me. I pulled out a blank sheet of paper and began jotting down thoughts and aspirations, each phrase giving birth to buried dreams clamoring for oxygen. A business proposal I once dismissed due to Blake's voice echoed in my head. An innovative concept that had been brushed aside. Wouldn't now be the perfect time to assemble the pieces? Each word felt like a step toward unearthing my own identity. My pen glided over the page, and soon the thoughts combined into coherence. A startup centered on transforming artisan skills into a digital marketplace materialized. The excitement fueled me, and I envisioned countless artisans finding their voice, just as Jessica and I attempted to reclaim ours. My heartbeat accelerated, my self-doubt inching backward for the first time in years. But then a stark realization captured my attention. A dark specter of fear emerged from the recesses of my mind. What if I failed? Wasn't he pursuing my desires a betrayal to Blake, who had always prioritized family stability over dreams? With each scribbled idea, however, my doubt began to transform into a realization. Failure was a distinct possibility, yet that very prospect spoke of a future in which I could explore resilience and adaptability. In contrast, remaining stagnant seemed far more tragic than risk-taking. Every bold stroke on paper became synonymous with shedding the weight of obligation Blake had forced upon me. Sipping coffee, I took a moment to breathe deeply, setting my pen down for a moment to collect my thoughts. Jessica's bold defiance replayed in my mind, and I felt a stirring solidarity simmering between us. Perhaps together we could navigate this uncharted territory. But could we truly withstand Blake's impending reckoning? I resolved then to share my ideas with Jessica, affirming that we wouldn't simply be embarking on individual journeys of liberation. We would do it together. With this sense of partnership, the dread of Blake's inevitable backlash began to feel less intimidating. As our united strength painted a clearer path forward, as I finalized my proposal, the quiet glow of determination illuminated my heart. I realized I had come to embrace the uncertainty. It no longer paralyzed me. Instead, it invigorated me, pushing me toward action and discovery. But just as the momentum might propel me into this new ambition, an urgent thought broke through. Would my proposal elicit Blake's wrath or worse, disappointment? The realization left me breathless. Transparency now held the key, but opening the door required immense courage. How would Blake react when he discovered not just my ambitions but the alliance forming between Jessica and me? As I contemplated this new layer of anxiety, I knew I was standing on the brink of a decision that could either lead to visionary liberation or familial fracture. And suddenly the question loomed larger than before. Were we ready for the battles that lay ahead as we sought the truth of our identities? The morning after my chaotic epiphany, a mild tension crept into my bones as I brewed coffee. I stood at the counter gazing out the window, studying how the daylight nudged the world awake and chased away shadows. Was I ready to greet the day? More importantly, was I ready to confront Blake? My heart raced against the familiar rhythm of his expectations. My thoughts turned to Jessica. Her fierce spirit ignited a flicker of hope within me. We had longed for a break from the narrative woven by Blake, a narrative shackled to tradition and predictability. It was time to galvanize our bond, to steer our lives toward an empowering reckoning. I could almost feel her enthusiasm, ringing out like a signature bell amidst the backdrop of Blake's dominion. Should I call her now? The idea of sharing my proposal sent a thrill through me. Yet dread seeped in at the edges. What if she didn't feel the same urgency? I needed to forge ahead together, and I wanted to invite her into my vision. I scoured my sketches, each one resembling a shedding of my past self. There were forests bustling with artisans, products thriving in cozy, user-friendly spaces. For the first time, I truly believed I could create something meaningful. But in embracing this vision, I felt the weight of vulnerability pooling within me. I couldn't bring my aspirations to life if I remained ensnared by fear, even the fear of disappointing Blake. Suddenly, a wave of determination surged through me. I'd face Blake head-on. The urgency crackled in the air, a silent promise that today would not unravel into another cycle of compliance and evasion. Grabbing my phone, I dialed Jessica, my hands trembling slightly. "Hey," she answered, a hint of that contagious enthusiasm lighting her voice. "Can we meet? I have something I want to show you," I said, trying to suppress the rush of nerves. "Of course. I'll be right over." I hung up, breathing deeply. The initiative felt exhilarating, each breath feeding into a newfound resolve. I wanted to construct a foundation based on our shared dreams, a tapestry woven with our individual threads unfurling towards innovation. When Jessica arrived, her eyes danced with curiosity as I laid out my sketches on the desk. "What is this?" She leaned closer, scanning the proposals that had once seemed unrealizable. "I want to start a digital marketplace for artisans, those overlooked gems who need a platform for their skills and stories." Each word emerged with a surge of fearless drive, reinforced by her presence. Her response ignited sparks of excitement. "This is incredible. You can make it happen. We can make it happen." But moments later, a somber realization emerged in her eyes, and the enthusiasm wavered slightly. "What about Blake? He won't take this well." The weight of her unspoken fear punctured my momentum like a balloon. Yet, this was precisely why we needed our self-defined futures. If we don't tell him, we allow him to dictate our paths. It's time to present our intentions honestly. The acknowledgement hung heavily between us. I could almost feel the air shift. The thought of Blake's reaction loomed ominously, yet I also sensed an exhilarating prospect emerging. Clarity through the potential chaos. Prior conversations about his expectations flooded my mind, the chilling grip of his disappointment still lingering. But wasn't their power and vulnerability? In that moment, sharing our dreams made the prospect of facing him less frightening. "Let us do it," Jessica declared, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. Together. Those simple words resonated deeply, cultivating a sense of unity. Speaking my aspirations had shifted something within, a burgeoning sense of confidence enveloping the fraying edges of my resolve. We needed to approach Blake not just with dreams, but also with a proposal that stood firm on the foundation of our intentions. But as I gathered my sketches once more, a deeper question surfaced. Would Blake's wrath be a catalyst for change or an insurmountable wall? As I wrestled with this uncertainty, I encountered a fierce determination to confront the unknown. Would Jessica and I, in this transformative venture, stand resilient or fracture under familial pressure? With a potent mix of anticipation and anxiety swirling within me, I turned to the sketches, my tangible commitment. It was time to harness our united strength and embark on this journey, come what may. Tomorrow would bring our confrontation with Blake, a defining moment brimming with possibility. Would we embrace our truth or falter under the weight of expectation? The air felt electric as Jessica and I prepared for the conversation that could redefine our futures. My heart raced with nervous anticipation as we walked into the dimly lit living room, where Blake sat flipping through a magazine, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. I felt Jessica's hand squeeze mine, a silent but powerful reassurance that we were in this together. "Blake," I began, my voice steadying as I gathered my strength. "We need to talk." He looked up, his brows furrowing slightly. "About what?" The tone in his voice hinted at irritation, but I was ready. Wasting no time, I launched into our proposal, unfurling the sketches before him like treasures uncovered. My passion ignited with every word I spoke. We want to create a digital marketplace to support artisans, to give them the visibility and recognition they deserve. It's a platform for empowerment. Jessica chimed in, her eyes glimmering with enthusiasm. It's about pursuing our dreams, breaking free from the suffocating expectations that have defined our lives for too long. Blake's expression shifted, his skepticism hardening with each sentence. And you think this is a responsible move? An artisan marketplace? It sounds naive at best, reckless at worst, he shot back, eyes narrowing. But instead of retreating, I felt the fire within me blaze even brighter. Recklessness is shoving dreams aside for the comfort of conformity, Blake. This is about authenticity and taking risks. Jessica's voice was unwavering, cascading strength into the room. It's time for both of us to embrace what we truly want. Living in your shadow is diminishing our potential. Blake's reaction was instantaneous. You're just going to throw away years of stability and security for what? A whim? There was frustration bubbling beneath his facade, but I stood firm. This was no longer just about him. It was about our shared commitment to reclaim our narratives. I took a deep breath. This isn't a whim. It's a declaration of who we are and who we want to become. I want to teach and inspire through this venture. It aligns with my values and passions. Is that not worth pursuing? Silence hung in the air. Blake's rigidity faltered ever so slightly, and I could see the cogs turning in his mind. You both think you know better than the path set before you? He challenged, the edge of disapproval sharp. Yes, Jessica replied, a steely resolve in her voice. I want to feel alive and be proud of the choices I make, not just fit a mold. With her words hanging in the air, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. Blake leaned back, clearly processing our words but not quite ready to yield. Yet, for the first time, I sensed that our determination was penetrating the walls he had built around himself. In a moment of clarity, I pressed on. This isn't just about us achieving personal fulfillment. This is about the opportunity to uplift those who have been overlooked and underestimated. Imagine the impact we could create, Blake. Isn't that worth considering? Maybe it was the passion in our voices or the unmistakable urgency for change that opened a door in Blake's resolute demeanor. I could see the gears turning in his mind, and my heart raced at the thought that he might just understand. Deep down, perhaps he too had once had dreams that were pushed aside for the sake of stability. We fell silent, the three of us suspended in a moment of reflection. Then Blake began to soften. I just wish you could see the potential consequences of failing, he said. His voice lacking the ferocity it held moments before. Every true pursuit carries risks, I responded, eyes locked with his. But we owe it to ourselves and to each other to find out what we're capable of. Growth comes from stepping beyond the familiar. It allows us to discover our true strengths. Blake hesitated. His hand dropped the magazine, and for the first time, I could almost see the uncertainty flickering in his eyes. You both believe in this more than anything else, don't you? I nodded, swallowing my apprehension. We do. And with your support, it could become something extraordinary. A heavy silence settled over us, yet it felt as though the air had shifted. I could feel the hopeful energy swirling around us, a glimpse of the path toward understanding and acceptance. After a few long moments, Blake sighed heavily. I want to pretend to fully understand your path, but I can't deny your passion. I can't keep trying to control you both. You deserve to explore this even if I think it's a mistake. The declaration was startling, echoing through my chest. It was acceptance, the culmination of our efforts to communicate and confront the truths defining our family ties. In that moment, not only had we garnered Blake's tentative approval, but we also forged a new kind of bond, a shared understanding amidst the chaos. Thank you, Jessica finally said, her voice rich with inclusion and empowerment. My heart soared. It was the culmination of so many buried hopes. As the conversation drew to a close, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. We hadn't just challenged Blake. We had asserted our independence, laying down a foundation for our aspirations. No longer would we simply exist in his shadow. That night, as I lay in bed processing the day's events, I realized I had achieved a critical milestone in my growth. I had evolved from a passive player into an architect of my destiny. Jessica and I were no longer victims of our family narrative. We had taken ownership of our paths. With our eyes now set on the future, there was much to create and explore. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt profound and adventure-filled with potential. As we took our next steps, I vowed to nurture this newfound tenacity, not just for myself, but for the passionate dreamers surrounding us. Embracing this potential would be our legacy. This is where I realized that true fulfillment lies not in battling others, but in forging ahead, hand in hand with those who dare to dream, ready to change the world one artisan at a time. Now, my friends, it's your turn to join us on this transformative journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your support makes all the difference.